Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tider Insider Television. Still across the studio from Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris as we continue to work at a safe social distance inside our digital media studios here at the University of Alabama at WVUA 23. Well, there was a lot to like about Alabama's win over Texas A&M. To quote Rodney Orr on my radio show earlier this week, bombs away. The Tide beat Texas A&M 52-24, and I'm sure most of you watched it this weekend, either at the game as one of the 20,000 or so fans or on CBS. Mac Jones was named the SEC Offensive Player of the Week for his efforts. He started out the game with a bomb to John Mechie for a 78-yard touchdown. He went 20 of 27 for 435 yards and 4 scores. It looks like this is going to be a great season for Mac. Malachi Moore on the defensive side out of Hewitt-Trussville was named the SEC Freshman of the Week. What a great start to his career as a defensive back. He had 6 stops, an interception, and 2 breakups over the weekend. The passing game is clicking on offense. Just listen to John Mechie III. He caught 2 of the deep shots from Mac Jones and had a career day, and he says that this is kind of becoming the norm for the Bama O.
I would say that it's just like routine. It's just practice. It's like any other pass that we've done hundreds of times over in practice, and it's all about focus. I think I have a great relationship with him, as do all the other receivers. I think Mac is a great leader and does a great job of leading the offense.
All right, let's bring in Rodney now for analysis. Rodney, let's start with the good. Obviously, Mac Jones played terrific. He sees the field. His touch, particularly on the deep ball, and I think people that follow football know what I'm talking about. He throws a catchable ball. You know what? I have guys have arm strength, but they just can't put air under it like that. To hit Waddle, to hit Mechie, to hit Devontae Smith, and hit him in stride where they can do something after the catch. He's really playing well, Rod.
He really is. And you know, Gary, I go back to what I've said several times. I really think that the experience he got last year, look, we hated certainly for Tua to go down, but the opportunities he got to play in some of those big games, I think that really kind of helped him in terms of his development preparation for this year. You know, I think, Gary, the teammates around him gained a lot of confidence in him even last year. So I think it's really carried over extremely well into the early part of this season.
Of course, there's a reason those guys were getting behind the secondary regularly, and that's because A&M did kind of sell out to stop the run. Having said that, the running game right now is an area, Rodney, where it looks like Alabama could stand a little improvement.
You know, the first half of last year, Gary, that was kind of the same talking point, was the running game wasn't quite clicking. Of course, Alabama has a veteran offensive line now. But listen, if these teams are going to sell out to stop the run, you've got to be able to make these throws down the field. That's the key. I mean, Mac Jones is doing that, and now you're going to see possibly defenses have to play Alabama a little bit more honestly up front.
Defensively, gave up 24 points, but got some stops, and that young secondary made some plays. Malachi Moore, we mentioned, 6 tackles, an interception, 2 pass breakups. Jordan Battle, 9 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a pass breakup. Daniel Wright had a bad play when he didn't get the guy out of bounds, and he went for a touchdown, but he redeemed himself with a pick 6. A&M threw it a lot, and that secondary, as I said, gave up some plays, but they made some plays too.
Yeah, they did, Gary. You've got a lot of young players back there. I know Alabama fans expect, you know, shutouts every game, but listen, the truth is you've got a lot of inexperience on that defensive side, but I saw a lot of promising things. You talked about Malachi Moore. I mean, I don't think a true freshman can play much better than what he's done in the secondary. Jordan Battle's coming around. You've got Josh Jobe now starting at the other corner opposite of Surtain. So they've got some inexperience. They're starting to develop there. I think up front, defensively, some guys flashed. Fadarian Mathis, Byron Young, I thought really looked good. And Chris Allen, we've talked about, will he, you know, kind of step up now that he's been in the program for a while? He's coming off that injury from a couple of years ago that really held him back, and I thought he played extremely well also.
Now to some negatives. Alabama's defense allowed Texas A&M to convert 10 of 17 third downs. Aggies had 25 first downs, 450 yards. Now, we talked about this on my radio show earlier this week. Third down defense isn't what it used to be. Teams used to 3rd, 7th, 3rd, and 8. They were going to run the ball. If they hit a play, that's fine. If not, they were going to punt it. Teams don't give in now, Rodney. They're trying to make first downs on 3rd and long. They're putting pressure on the defense. So that some of that's expected. Having said that, you would like to get off the field more often than 7 times out of 17 opportunities on third down.
Yeah, and again, I think obviously that's a work in progress. But listen, there were a couple of times, for example, I know that Daniel Wright got flagged on one play for pass interference, and it was a very questionable call. They get off the field there. They prevent a touchdown because A&M did go on to convert. But that was one, Gary. And also another time, I think you probably remember this, may have been on fourth down, actually, when Jordan Battle had great coverage. He dove with the receiver, got his hand on the ball, and still got through. And, the receiver made a catch. So those were some tough things there. But, yeah, that's something that I know they certainly want to kind of improve in that area.
And we touched on it a little earlier, but through 2 games, Alabama averaging less than 4 yards per rush. With those backs, with that offensive line, you got to believe that's going to improve.
I certainly do, Gary. I think, with Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, and it'd be interesting to see if they have an opportunity to develop a third back, Trey Sanders. Yeah, as you look at them, Gary, and if you want to nitpick a little bit in the running game, you would like to see, certainly this is something I've thought about, is if you had a guy that was a home run hitter, a guy that could take it the distance, maybe add a little electricity and quickness to that running game.
Could have been Keelan Robinson, possibly, but he's not on the roster right now. Let's turn to coach talk. Coach Saban is up against one of his former offensive coordinators, and he thinks, Coach Saban does, that this game is going to be a tough one, dealing with that Ole Miss offense, which is coordinated by the head coach, Lane Kiffin, and is very, very explosive.
I think it'll be really important that we play really well against this team this week, because this is the most explosive team we've played against, this far. They're going to spread you out. They've got a lot of good skill players. They can run it. They can throw it. Receivers are not easy to cover. Tight end's a really good receiver, very athletic. So this will be a very challenging game for us.
All right, Rod, clearly Alabama's the better team. That's why they're a 24-point favorite. That's why they're the most dominant program in college football. But this game, it does make you nervous a little bit. And of course, we don't know what the weather is going to be like. That's a potential issue there with the hurricane situation, and will the game even be played. But if it is played on Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock, Ole Miss can move the ball. They can score points. Matt Corral, he may be playing better than Mac Jones. They've got weapons on the outside, and they've got a couple running backs that are elusive. This is a scary offensive team. Now, whether or not they can stop Alabama, I don't know. But from an offensive standpoint, Ole Miss concerns you. Yeah,
they do, and I tell you why, because Lane Kiffin's really good, especially in games. I mean, in the middle of the game, he certainly makes adjustments. He can create mismatches. You've got a lot of youth on Alabama's side on defensively, and I think he's a guy that could create some confusion for those young players, those inexperienced players, and if he does, that could lead to some big plays, some points for Ole Miss. So yeah, they've been very effective. They've got some skilled people who can make some plays. Elijah Moore's an outstanding receiver, Gary. I think he leads the nation in receiving yards. He's already got 20 catches in 2 games. Jerrion Ealy is a fantastic running back, a guy that, is a big play guy, is a runner, but also he can catch the ball out of the backfield. And, Matt Corral, the quarterback's just been fantastic. He's averaging 357 yards a game passing. He's got 7 touchdown passes in 2 games, only 1 interception. So he's been real efficient as well. So, yeah, they've got some weapons, and Kiffin is really using them well.
Yeah, Mingo, a big receiver, and they got a tight end now, too, a transfer that's tearing it up. All right, we'll have our predictions on the game later on in the show. Check out this tweet by the Athletics' Mac Brown that sums up Alabama's dominance in the Saban era. Since 2008, Alabama has 61 wins versus ranked teams. That's 17 more than the next best team. No losses to unranked teams. 9 better than the next best team. Been ranked in the top 5 in 86.1% of the polls. Second place, Ohio State at 44.8%. That, my friends, is why Alabama, even with Clemson's success, Ohio State, LSU, some others, Alabama's still the gold standard in college football. Still the most successful program right now in the country. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, we'll take a closer look at this weekend's game at Ole Miss. Plus, Alabama basketball head coach Nate Oates receives yet another amazing basketball commit for the 2021 recruiting class. This might be the biggest one yet. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us at the address on your screen, or you can tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide and has been doing it for 20 years. Tider Insider Television will return right after this.
we got to play better. Got to limit explosive plays, keep the ball in front of us. Because now they got another receiver I'd never even heard of that just went for 150 that runs by everybody. So I thought there were 2, now there's 3.
Welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris, sitting across the studio from Tider Insider's Rodney Orr. Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin knows a thing or two about offense when he sees it, and it's clear that 2 dynamic offenses will face off Saturday evening in Oxford. The Rebels and quarterback Matt Corral have been dominant through two games. Corral is second in the SEC in passing yards with 715, and Rebels receiver Elijah Moore is averaging 160 yards receiving per game. Ole Miss narrowly defeated Kentucky in overtime 42-41 last weekend in Lexington to get Kiffin his first win at Mississippi. Rodney, what does the Alabama defense need to do to try to slow down this dynamic Ole Miss passing game?
Well, first of all, Gary, I think the most important thing is obviously you have to be in the right position, but I think when you're in position to make plays, make tackles, that's something that in the Missouri game we saw more of that, probably less missed tackles in the Texas A&M game. But, with these players that Ole Miss has, their ability, Elijah Moore, we mentioned him, Jerrion Ealy, even they used John Rice Plumlee, the backup quarterback, who's a guy that really had a good game here last year as a true freshman. They use him in some different ways, different roles to utilize his athletic ability. But you've got to get these guys on the ground. And I'll tell you, too, Matt Corral, he can move pretty well also. So if you flush him out, you've got to make sure that, you get a hold of him.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for Alabama's defense against the Rebels. Well, Alabama basketball secured a commitment for 2021 on Saturday. He's a 5-star point guard from Calhoun High School here in Alabama. 24/7 Sports has Davison ranked as the #1 player in the state. He chose the Crimson Tide over Auburn, Kansas, LSU, Memphis, and Michigan. He's the first point guard in the class and joins Deshaun Holt as the second commitment. Here's the thing on Davison, Rodney, is that he's a 5-star player. First of all, that gets your attention. But he's an in-state guy. He's a guy that a few months ago most people had ticketed for Auburn. He's dynamic. He can get to the rim. He can shoot the 3. It just, I think, sends a message that what Nate Oates is doing here at Alabama is resonating with the top players in the country.
Yeah, it really is, Gary. And I think now you see a guy like J.D. Davison, a home state player, he's sold on what, Nate Oates is doing. I mean, you look at all the players that Nate Oates has brought in from all over the country, even Canada, obviously. So he's done extremely well on the recruiting trail. It's made an impression here at home. With a guy like J.D. Davison, you mentioned, I think even 30 days ago or less, Gary, most people thought he was headed to Auburn. A lot of people did anyway. And so I think this is a great recruiting job by not only Nate Oates, his staff. Petway did a fantastic job as well in this. So, again, huge pickup.
Every now and then one player makes that big a difference. You look at a guy like Davison playing at Alabama, but that also means he's not playing at Auburn. That type of impact for those two programs is huge. Huge plus for Alabama, big minus for Auburn if that commitment sticks. Well, Alabama women's soccer was away this past weekend in Gainesville, playing in the rain against the University of Florida. This was the team's first loss of the season, although the Tide ended the game on a positive note when sophomore Sydney Vincent notched her first career goal and got it in the 5th minute of the match. Alabama actually led this thing 1-0 and could not hold on. They fell 2-1 to the Gators. They return home on Sunday at 2 p.m. against Arkansas. That's the next match coming up. Well, still to come on TITV, a former Crimson Tide tennis star is making a statement at the French Open. And next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or use that hashtag TITV if you want to send us a tweet. We'll be right back with the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. The former Crimson Tide tennis standout Alexi Racci and her partner defeated a top 2 ranked team in the world in straight sets to advance to the quarterfinals of the French Open. It's the highest ranked opponents that Geraci has ever been a part of defeating. Geraci and Desiree Krajcik defeated their opponents 7-5, 6-4. Haisu Sui and Barbara Strykova dealing those opponents just their second loss of the calendar year. Geraci and Krajcik are scheduled to play in the French Open quarterfinals tomorrow. Good luck to them. All right, welcome back to the program. Gary Harris, Rodney Orr with you, and let's get to the phone lines. Do we have a call ready to go? Yeah, we got Harold on from Anniston. What about the linebackers Harold is going to ask us about? Hey, Harold, how are you?
guys?
Doing well.
Yeah, it's kind of the same problem we had last year, man, with Mr. Simons on, running backs coming out of the backfield, and looks like the tight end, too. We're missing that. You think Lane Kiffin's going to try to exploit that, man, or are we going to have to tighten that up?
Well, Harold, he's going to try to exploit any weakness that he sees. That's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to attack those weaknesses. At the same time, look at all the plays A&M gave up. I mean, I know what you're saying, and there is concern there. But as Rodney and I were talking about earlier, Harold, I mean, you just can't look at defense the way we used to look at it. I mean, what Georgia did to Auburn the other night, incredibly impressive. Don't see that very often. But for the most part, these offenses are going to make some plays against you. You got to make some plays too, which Alabama did against A&M. But, Rodney, to think you're going to go over there to Oxford and you're just going to shut this team down, I'm not sure that's very realistic.
When you have those kind of athletes, Gary, you have that kind of coaching with Lane Kiffin, putting them in positions to make plays. I mean, you're not going to, completely shut teams down like this. And I tell you, look, I've watched some other games over the past couple of years. Watching Georgia, probably Georgia's over the last 2 seasons has played as well defensively as anyone in the country. But, Gary, when they got matched up against a team that can make plays like LSU, LSU lit them up pretty good. So, again, it's just an indication of how difficult it is to play defense these days. All
right, let's keep it rolling on the phone calls. Let's head over to Gadsden. We're going to stay in Northeast Alabama. Let's take our next phone caller. And who have we got? We got Charles there in Gadsden. Hey, Charles, how are you?
Hello, sir, Gary.
Hey.
I got a couple of questions for you, man. I haven't seen the first 2 games, but how's Ben Davidson playing? I just heard you mention Keenan Robinson with his team. What happened with that?
All right, as far as Ben Davis, he's played some. He has. I saw him in the Missouri game make a couple of plays. Didn't see him as often against Texas A&M, but he's certainly in the rotation, Rodney.
Yeah, Ben Davis played, as you mentioned, against Missouri. Played in some of the latter part of the game. I know for sure. Saw him in some of the different packages throughout the game. So I don't really recall how much opportunity he got against Texas A&M, but I expect Ben to continue to play. As far as Keelan Robinson's concerned, there's really not been any official word. He is on, he's on the team. We know that. Has he participated in practice or any of those things? We really don't know because practice has been closed and, there hasn't been any sort of an announcement that he's not part of the team. We do think he is, but he's not participating so far in terms of the games.
Yeah, we're assuming that right now he's not playing this season, at least so far. But you're absolutely right, Ronnie. He is still part of the team, but no announcement from the university. But haven't seen him in action this year. All right, we're going to take a time out here and come back with more of your phone calls. Also, opportunity knocked for former Crimson Tide running back Damien Harris last night, and he was quick to take advantage of it against the defending Super Bowl champion. Those highlights are on the way. And more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. 205-348-9882 is the number. Or you can email us or tweet at us as well. We're coming back with more Tighter Insider TV right after this timeout. The Patriots lost to the Chiefs 26-10 last night in Kansas City, but it was a big night for Pats running back Damien Harris. The former Crimson Tide standout rushed for 100 yards against KC in his season debut. In fact, the Patriots activated Harris from the injured reserve just a few hours before kickoff, and boy, he got his opportunity and he took advantage of it. Those 100 yards came with just 17 carries. Going into last night's game, Harris had a total of 4 carries in 2 games in his NFL career. So you know he can run with a football, Rodney. He gets his opportunity. He takes advantage of it last night, and that could mean more carries down the line for New England. All right, let's get right back to the phone lines. Rick is with us over in Bluff Park. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Hey, fellas. How y'all doing?
Doing great.
I enjoyed John Mechie's coming out party, so to speak.
Sure.
Like the latest in a long line of just thoroughbred wide receivers, starting, I guess, with Julio Jones. Anyway, and also I'd like to say good game for Brian Robinson. He showed up well when he got a chance. And I go back to last year about the push that the offensive line does not seem to have. And I know that it's still early in the season. I hope these guys meld and work together and come together. 334-pound average, that's something to push around right there. Thanks again for taking my call.
Yeah, Rick, Brian Robinson, 10 carries for 60 yards, had a good game. Landon Dickerson said this week, and I'm going to have the clip on my 10 o'clock sportscast tonight on WVO 23, that the offensive line does need to play better. They believe they should play better. They believe that the running game should be more productive. So, Rodney, it's something that they're working on. And now they have been very good in pass protection, so you got to give them credit for that. Mac Jones has stood back there most of the time with a clean pocket. But I agree with Rick Rod. I think they can get more of a push up front in the run game.
Yeah. Again, it's only 2 games. They played 2 games. I think this offensive line is going to continue to get better. But listen, let me say this. You did point out that they have pass protected extremely well, and I think they have. And two, Gary, look at some of the short yardage goal line situations. Najee had a couple of touchdown runs, had a couple against Missouri, where the offensive line did a really nice job of opening holes for him in those short yardage situations. So, I mean, I don't think all is bad with the run blocking. Certainly, I do think that the way the defenses have played have contributed to it, but I also think as time goes along, you're going to see that improve.
All right, thanks for the phone calls. It's prediction time when we come back. Welcome back to TITV. It's prediction time. Let me say again that the Hurricane Delta situation makes this a little iffy, but assuming the game's played and played in good conditions, that's what we're basing our picks on. Rodney, let's start with you.
Well, you know, Gary, I love the way Nick Saban has kind of created this narrative about the Ole Miss offense and how explosive they are, and they are. But what about Alabama's offense against this Ole Miss defense? I mean, think about this. Ole Miss defensively, they're giving up over 600 yards a game. They're giving up 7.1 yards per rush. They've already given up 12 touchdowns in 2 games. You know, listen, I think if it's a good field, Alabama could probably name its score in terms of offense. But I pick it 58-24, Gary, assuming that the field's going to be in pretty good condition.
I'm kind of along the same lines of thinking. I mean, look, Kentucky ran for over 400 yards, had 3 guys for over 100 yards rushing, and Ole Miss won the game. Give them credit. You don't see that very often. I think Alabama rolls in this one, too. I've got the final score 55-31. Wow. I think there'll be a lot of points, so we're right on the same page there. We'll find out, hopefully, on Saturday with what 2020 has dealt us. Who knows? But let's keep our fingers crossed the game is played. All right, that's going to do it for the program. You can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. Good night.